that China is not the country of 1990s. It is year 1920. It is year 2026, and the advance of Chinese technologies is so big that we can benefit also from technology transfers from China, not only from EU to China, but the other way around. And it makes perfect sense because the traditional quality manufacturing of Europe can be enhanced by the huge technological progress China has achieved during past 20 years.
你能想象吗？曾经被欧美传统巨头视为调侃对象的中国技术，现在却让欧洲内部的理性派开始反思，甚至公开喊话，欧洲必须向中国学习技术。在最近的 CGTN 对话节目中，欧洲议会议员多斯托尔在亲身体验了中国的发展后，直言不讳地指出，别再自欺欺人了，现在的中国早就不是过去的模样。现在是2026年，中国在电动汽车、人工智能等领域的行业技术极度先进，中国才是领先的一方。他甚至提出，欧洲的传统制造业如果想要生存，就应该主动接受来自中国的技术转移。这番话撕下了西方政客长久以来的傲慢面具。所谓的去风险或保护主义政策，本质上并不是为了产业安全，而只是为了掩盖欧洲本土部分落后车企已经无法与极具创新力的中国工业相竞争的残酷现实。那么中国技术究竟是如何完成这场史诗级逆袭，逼得欧洲理性派不得不放下身段低头学习的？今天这期视频，我们用事实和数据切入，探讨中欧技术博弈背后的真相。
Hello and welcome to Dialogue. China and the European Union remain deeply interconnected through trade, investment, technology, and diplomacy. Yet the relationship is also facing growing strains. Brussels is speaking more openly about de-risking industrial security and strategic autonomy, while Beijing warns that some of Europe's emerging policy proposals risk pushing the relationship toward protectionism and discrimination. At the same time, European leaders and senior officials continue to visit China, underscoring that despite rising tensions, both sides still see engagement and cooperation as essential. So where do China-EU relations stand today? Can Europe pursue greater security and competitiveness without shutting the door on cooperation with China? And following US President Donald Trump's recent visit to China, will European governments reconsider their own approach toward Beijing? Join us for discussion today from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today is Ondřej Dostál, a Czech member of the European Parliament. Dr. Dostál, thank you for accepting our interview. I know that recently the tensions in terms of trade between China and the European Union are rising. Some people are concerned so much that they worry there might be a trade war between the two sides. As a member of the European Parliament, how do you look at the current relationship between the two sides?
The majority of European Parliament unfortunately promote the view of strategic rivalry. We, however, think that China is a natural partner of Europe. It is also a necessity for us to cooperate because in many vital items, for instance, pharmaceuticals or green technologies, we are dependent on the source from China. So if we cut the relationship and have a trade war, it will be to much greater detriment of European Union than to China.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that being said, of course, we are also seeing like a group of European leaders since late last year and early this year, they visited to China. So obviously, probably that also reflects, people's desire to engage rather than, having a trade war, that's all.
There are no natural conflicts and differences between us and China. To the contrary, our best interest is peace and prosperity, which China and EU can jointly guarantee if we behave rationally. And our task in the European Parliament is to speak for this solution. Fortunately, we see leaders like the Prime Minister Sanchez from Spain or Prime Minister Fico from Slovakia who are already presenting this narrative for a long time. I was very pleased to see Robert Fico, who I greatly admire, to be present at the September military parade when I was also present as the member of European Parliament, the only member. So there are rational voices which build the relations, and hopefully they will prevail over the voices which try to destroy the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, the European Union, the European officials often say they want a constructive, stable relationship with China. At the same time, I think they are, making policies like in the area like cybersecurity, for example, industrial policy or foreign investment. From Beijing's point of view, some of the policies are, indirectly maybe singling out the Chinese companies. They feel unfair. How do you look at that?
Objectively, there are some areas where the interests of EU and China differ. And of course, we have to defend them with respect to our partners. But in most areas, we will benefit from cooperation. And I'm really sad that some of our colleagues are building the disagreement to protect vested interests. Either vested interests of cooperation with transatlantic sphere only and avoiding cooperation with everyone else, or vested interests of industry who is no longer able to compete with the innovative Chinese industry and which wants to defend its small market instead of cooperating. Concerning the development, you have to understand that even 2 years ago, in 2024, no one would expect such a huge split between Europe and the United States, which happened. No one would expect that Greenland would be threatened by American president, but it happened. So many of the European politicians need to mentally move from the paradigm of transatlantic cooperation, exclusive cooperation, to cooperation on multilateral basis, on the basis of UN Charter, meaning also with China on Euro-Asian continent.
Well, I think you are talking about the European strategic autonomy, like President Macron often, stressed. So how is that going? Is there agreement, a consensus that there's a need for strategic autonomy?
Well, strategic autonomy should not happen to be, in fact, isolation or dependence on someone else, meaning United States. If we are to be strategically autonomous as an open economy, we need to cooperate with as many partners as possible, especially with those who don't attack other countries, who behave as a force of peace, and who at the same time present a big consumer market for our product and a big innovation source for our consumers. And China is a natural partner, but not only China, it is also ASEAN countries or Central Asian countries. So the multilateral cooperation in Euro-Asian sphere is something we should pursue if we are to be safe and strategically autonomous. So paradoxically, cooperation is the best way how to achieve the strategic autonomy we need.
Right, cooperation probably is also the best way for security. Speak of that, back to these EU policies targeting Chinese companies. Of course, on one hand, there's a legitimate security concern. On the other hand, of course, there's protectionism. So where is the line?
Well, unfortunately, the line drawn by European Commission and Parliament to protect our interest is too protectionist and not benefiting the European citizens and consumers. Of course, there are some areas where we need to defend our interest, for instance, in the area of cyber security, but we are already not autonomous in area of like IT, the technologies, because most of our services we use are from United States. We don't have an autonomous IT technology. So we need to find a right balance between developing and at the same time protecting about cyber security threats. But it is doable and the compromise can be found.
Well, earlier you mentioned about you are for cooperation between China and European Union. Back in 2024, 2025, you also said that EU should move beyond strategic rivalry and security competition with China, and instead focus on cooperation. Of course, like during the Biden administration, the European Union, together with the U.S., some of the policies were influenced by Washington. There's a comprehensive investment treaty that was shelved, unfortunately. Do you think there's a change, or there's an increasing understanding of the importance of cooperating with each other rather than fighting against each other?
Yes, and the understanding of necessity to cooperate with China and other countries grows at the same time as the security of our cooperation with United States lessens. If United States can no longer provide a stable partner and turns into a rogue superpower, even for security reasons, we need to find other partners who would balance the potentially aggressive superpowers. And this applies for every aggressive superpower because in mutual interest of EU and China is to have peace and also safeguard the trade routes, the trade corridors. The only way how to safeguard the trade we need to export but also to import is to keep the trade routes safe. And unfortunately, a situation like which happened in Strait of Hormuz or the wars both against Ukraine and against Iran is violating these possibilities. And in my opinion, EU cannot alone tackle this problem. We need a peaceful, reliable partner on the other side, and this is China.
You mentioned in the previous interview how your visits of China in 24-25 changed your perception of Europe's future. What was it about the visit that caused such a reaction?
I was able to visit one of the landlocked provinces about which I knew very little, and then I came, was brought to the conference by a wonderful electric car and found out about the AI developments, about the technology developments, and I learned what more Europeans should know, that China is not the country of 1990s. It is year 1920. It is year 2026, and the advance of Chinese technologies is so big that we can benefit also from technology transfers from China, not only from EU to China, but the other way around. And it makes perfect sense because the traditional quality manufacturing of Europe can be enhanced by the huge technological progress China has achieved during past 20 years.
听完这位欧洲议员的直白呼吁，我们应当看清当下的全球大势。多斯托尔议员在采访中说了一句一针见血的话：如果欧盟执意与中国打贸易战，那么到头来重创的只会是欧洲自己，而不是中国。在绿色科技、医药供应链等关键领域，欧洲对中国高度依赖，合作才是唯一的理性解。更讽刺的是，当一些欧洲官员还躲在布鲁塞尔，用意识形态偏见对中国指手画脚时，华盛顿的政客已经务实的同中国坐下来谈战略稳定与合作了。如果欧洲继续盲从，执迷于保护主义，把极具性价比和创新力的中国技术拒之门外，那么被时代抛弃的只能是欧洲自己。时代已经变了，过去是西方用技术限制我们，现在则是中国的创新正在重塑全球的工业标准。甚至在外交层面上，捷克新政府也开始明智地坚守一个中国原则，务实的修复前任政府给双边关系带来的损害。正如视频开头所言，合作比去风险更具建设性。面对欧洲议员抛出的欧洲应该向中国学习技术的务实观点，你认为欧洲的决策层最终能否放下傲慢，重回理性合作的轨道？欢迎在评论区留下你的深度思考。我们下期节目再见。